She can kill with a smile, she can wound with her eyes, and she can ruin your faith with her casual lies, and she only reveals what she wants you.
Welcome back, dear viewers, to another wonderful episode of One of Nine. This week's episode is a sure sign that Catholicism in the UK is making tiny baby steps forward. My dear friend Clive, who also has a dear friend, a new mum, she represents maybe a category hard to define, maybe hasn't quite made the leap, but is happy to go on a date with religion. She sent him a link of today's guest, who has her own YouTube channel. It's up to us, the Catholics, to make that argument alluring enough for these new mums to jettison the bright, shiny, yet ultimately disappointing ways of modernity and consider the repressive, medieval Catholic way of life. Hearth and home, Mass on Sunday, the devoted husband, the pitter-patter of tiny feet, of more tiny feet and more tiny feet, the things you'll never get done, but the happiness in your heart you feel every day.
And she'll carelessly cut you, laugh while you bleed, but she'll bring out the best.
Hello, welcome to One of Nine. I'm Maria Jones and this is Elizabeth. Elizabeth is married to Peter and they've got 4 beautiful children, girls, very girly house. Got 2 stepchildren and 2 children together. And Elizabeth started a YouTube channel about, I don't know, like not that long ago.
Like 4 months ago.
4 months ago. And you're doing incredibly well on there. A lovely channel, and that is how we met. So it's lovely to meet you, Elizabeth. And Elizabeth's channel is called Fruit of the Femme. Do you have a little look?
Darling. Hello, baby. You want to look at your mama?
Do you want to come with Uncle Peter?
Okay. It's hard to concentrate.
What were we saying before?
And you've got very interesting content, a video a week. Anyway, have a look. It's a lovely channel. And when I first saw it, I thought you are American and you've come to England and you must just like, maybe lots of Americans have a YouTube channel, so you're just kind of like doing a YouTube channel, but you're Canadian. So Elizabeth, you're from Canada, but your parents are both English.
Yes.
And then when did you live in Canada? When did you live in England?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of like back and forth, which is kind of confusing, but basically I was born in Canada. So my parents actually, they met in England, and then my dad went over to Canada because he had a house there, he had like a business there. My mum came to visit him and he was like, Susan, we should get married. They knew each other for 3 months before they got married. So that's why I love to tell that story, because they were very kind of decisive. Sorry, as I dropped the mic on the floor. Yeah, they were both a little bit older when they met. They'd actually both, but yeah, now like I wouldn't move back, I think. I mean, I miss things about Canada, but I think England is home now, so.
So you were not brought up Catholic? Mum and Dad have no religion?
No.
Anglican or Church of England or
So
Christian?
I am like baptized Church of England, and obviously my parents were as well because it was a generation thing, but they didn't have any faith, so neither of my parents. But my uncle was a Christian missionary, so not Catholic, but he was a Christian missionary for kind of like a very, I think you'd call it like fundamental Christianity. To an extent like that, I think like took the edge off. Like it wasn't anything intimidating about faith because they were all really lovely people. They were all such good friends, like genuinely embodied those Christian values so well.
So maybe even attractive?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like definitely the best people I know, like still, I would say the kindest people I've known were some of those people. So yeah,
when you moved back when you were 16, Mum moved back.
Yeah, Mum moved back. Yeah.
So before then, your dad had passed.
Yeah, so my dad died when I was 14. Yeah, just about to be 15 when he died.
And how was that? In terms of like not having a faith, how did you navigate that?
You mean navigating his death?
Incredibly painful time.
I actually think it's one of those things, like when it happens, I think when you're younger, you know, other people, like maybe if they haven't gone through it, they think, oh, like it must have been terrible. And to an extent it was, but I think it teaches you a lot at a young age about kind of life. Like people, you know, do die. And so it definitely like taught me the importance of like the family I still had, like really treasuring them. And interestingly, like, although I had no faith, I never really believed that he was gone. Like, I kind of was looking for signs, or I felt like maybe he was nearby sometimes. Like, I felt like a closeness to him, even though he was gone. Maybe that was like the beginning of some kind of like spiritual element in me. I don't know. But I didn't feel like he was totally gone. It didn't feel final for me. So you could say that I had some faith that he had gone somewhere.
Yeah.
Or at least I hoped that he had.
So then your mum's going it alone then with you two girls, and you were 14, your sister's maybe 12 or something.
Yeah, she was 12.
And then eventually she thought, let's go back to England, to our roots. Did she have family here and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so all of our family was still in the UK, and we kind of had been chatting while my dad was alive, like, should we stay in Canada or should we move back to England? And because of the way like GCSEs and A-levels work, it actually timed it perfectly that either we were going to go then so that I could do A-levels and my sister could do GCSEs, or we weren't going to go, because then it would be too difficult. Like, for me to jump in as an international student to university, like, it didn't make sense. So we just kind of decided that we were going to go and try it.
And then you moved somewhere near Oxfordshire. That area.
Yeah.
And then you then did the thing, the schoolgirl thing.
Yeah.
You did well at school. Did your A-levels, went to university in England.
Went to Birmingham. I love Birmingham.
And then what happened? And then did you do you've done a couple of
I did a
degrees.
master's.
So you did a master's?
Yeah.
So you're at Birmingham doing your degree in?
International relations.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you like that?
I did. Yeah.
And then when you went to, where did you go next for your?
I went to Amsterdam
Masters.
for my
Yeah,
master's.
that's it.
Yeah.
You went to Amsterdam.
Yeah. So that was fun.
And then when did you meet Peter?
So I had finished my master's, and then when I came back to the UK because I kind of like finished in the summer. I went and spent 6 weeks in Canada that summer just to kind of like see friends, see my uncle who was very ill, my dad's brother. And then I came back to the UK and kind of felt like, okay, I finished my master's, like back in the UK, I know I'm going to be in the UK for a while. Maybe I can like meet someone. So I started, as all the kids do these days, you online date. So that's how we met. We met on online dating.
And so you were living at home with your mum? Mm-hmm. And then you went on the...
Yeah. Went on the apps. I went on Bumble. And yeah, he had some nice photos on there of him with his motorcycle, which had an influence. I was like, oh, so cool. So yeah, then we just like were chatting and ended up having a very nice first date in Oxford.
And so did you live near each other?
We did. So yeah, we
And he
were
was
both
studying, did you say?
No, we were both working in Oxford, so it was kind of easy to meet up. Well, actually, no, I wasn't working in Oxford at that point. I was working where my mum lived. Kind of, then it was easy to get in, so we met just for, nice dinner in Oxford, and the rest is history.
Then at that point, you would consider yourself a feminist because this is part of your conversion. Has also been from and the sort of the fruit of your conversion, and this has been, in part your YouTube channel, what you're sharing about being feminine. So in what way, how did you get caught up in the feminist movement, or to what extent?
Yeah, I think it's kind of, for a lot of young women, I think it's just inevitable that you do get caught up in it, because when you're kind of going through school, I think there's the general messaging, even if it's not like super hardcore messaging, it's general that like delay marriage, delay having kids because they're kind of hassle and they're a bit of a burden. Definitely go to university. If you don't go to university, it's a waste, So I think even just that messaging in itself starts to build in you like this individualistic, like, I need to follow my purpose, and like I need to be successful, and like kind of the worldly definition of that. So I don't think it was really too difficult for me to get caught up in it. I had a lot of like female friends, and then I think not having a dad, like you just don't have that male balance perhaps, especially in the teenage years. So it was very much like, go and be free, go and enjoy, like, all of the world has to offer, and kind of live the, secular life. And if you've got it, flaunt it, and all of that stuff, kind of came straight from my family. So,
And then would you have actually identified yourself, I am a feminist, or would you,
yeah.
And what aspects of feminism would you have really said, look, I really feel strongly about this and this and this?
I think it was the idea that it sold of like freedom. So like when I was at university, and again, in like a very feministy group of friends, we all used to love to say to each other, like, how amazing, we can wait until we're 40 to have kids, because that's kind of like, what was promoted, because like if you're on that track, you're all on board with the idea that you can have IVF, that you could freeze your eggs. So it's like, literally your priority is like university, do your career, see the world, and then when you're ready, when it suits you, find a nice man and have kids, or just don't worry about the man, and just have kids, like, and do it on your own terms. So I think...
Don't worry about either.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So I think that idea of freedom, which isn't actually freedom, but at the time it was like that felt very appealing, that I could kind of, just like see the world and have fun.
And there's some element of those poor oppressed women in the past that weren't able to do that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah, exactly. And I think it comes back to the potential thing. I think because I did quite well at school, that links into like, well, therefore you should take that kind of cleverness or that book smarts, and if you don't do like a career with it, if you don't earn money with that smarts, it's a waste. Yeah. So like there was never the conversation of like, could you apply that to having a really, successful marriage, or a really, cozy home, or like homeschooling your kids, like, the alternative, there wasn't an alternative. So.
Yeah. So would you have gone to get a grasp of you at the extent as well of feminism, would you have gone to talks? Would you have listened to things online, or would you have read books?
Yeah, definitely. I probably have gotten rid of all of them now, so I can't remember the titles, but definitely I had like, feminist books. And I think at university, like a lot of it was kind of a feminist slant anyway. So the way that stuff was taught, like the way that history is taught, again, it's the focus, as you said, on like, well, poor women, or there's not very many women because they weren't allowed, so it's all of that, like that undertone. But definitely like, listened to, like podcasts all about like female empowerment and like,
wow. So you were
that kind of
full on feminist.
That's why I would say I was hardcore feminist for sure, yeah.
Wow, okay, so then you met Peter, you're dating.
Yeah.
Would you say that would be when was the first instance of a pushback with your feminist views?
Yeah, I think it was probably, well, I think within myself, I started to like kind of wake up even before we had discussions around feminism. So I think like after, the first date, Peter was very different than like anybody I had met, anybody I'd ever dated. And I kind of like recognized in myself that I was drawn to that kind of protective instinct that he had, kind of like the fact that he was a little bit older and he was chivalrous, like that was refreshing in itself. But I thought, okay, maybe I don't want a guy who like treats me like I'm exactly the same as him. Maybe there's something in me that is, I want to be a little softer. I don't want to have to be in control. I want to take a step back, and because he stepped forward, I was like, oh, interesting. I don't have to be in control. So I think before we even chatted about feminism, I was just drawn to like that. I was just drawn to that strength.
You started subconsciously maybe even just thinking, oh, okay. Yeah, take the lead.
Something different.
Because otherwise, was being a feminist maybe deemed as like being an attractive thing. Here you are, like a powerful woman. Yeah. That's like an attractive feature of a woman, as in something you'd aspire to, so something that a man would then be attracted to.
That is like a massive fib that like women are told, like guys like, girls that are successful, or guys like girls that are, going to take charge and are going to split the bill, and it's like you as the girl don't like it when the guy's like, so we're going to split the bill. And it's probably also like the guy doesn't like it, but nobody's really being honest about it. So I think, by the time I got to the stage of like dating Peter, I'd already, dated a couple of guys where I was just like, oh, this is exhausting, and like, you're having to take the lead and it just feels unnatural and you get resentful. So yeah,
Did you split the bill with Peter?
No, definitely not.
So he started out, and at this point he's been raised a Catholic, but he's not practicing his faith at all.
Yeah.
He had this maybe natural, traditional, masculine.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think from Eastern Europe.
Behaviour.
Yeah. Definitely it was kind of like a step change from, at least from the English guys that I had like encountered previously. Mm-hmm. So I liked that it was kind of like hold the door open, pay for dinner, take the initiative organizing the next date, like little things. But Yeah, and I think also, like, you know, when you have children, and Peter already had children, that just, you mature so much. Like, you care about other people, you have to care for someone else, and that really showed when we met, that, like, he had quite a bit of life figured out.
And that was attractive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, did you then start having any conversations about it, like with him being more sort of naturally traditional in the sort of the male and female roles? Did you start having conversations? When did you get pushed and pushed?
Yeah.
And
Well, I think, like, as soon as we started talking about kind of like feminism and the stuff that I thought I believed, there was tension, because I was used to saying something like feministy in an audience where you don't get the pushback, because if you're just speaking to other feminists, then they're like, yeah, of course, you go girl, you know, like, of course it's the guy, like, it can never be you, nothing wrong with you, which is just so unhelpful. Like, it's just delusional, but that's what you hear. And then Peter was like, okay, but why do you think that? Like, why do you believe that? Based on what? Like, you know, why do you think men and women are the same? In what context? And I was like, oh, I haven't actually thought about that. I can't give you an answer. And I was lucky really to meet him at the age where I was like, I'd finished university, so I'd had all that feminist stuff, but I kind of...
And you'd done your master's by this point?
Done my master's by this point. So I'd kind of like had an exposure to feminism and like bought it hook, line and sinker. But when he started to ask me, I was like, but I can't defend it. And I was just young enough, I think, to be able to be like still humble and say, okay, well, I haven't got it figured out. I can still change my mind. I'm not so attached to this idea that I can't admit to myself or to you that, like, I don't know why I believed that. And also I think it definitely massively helped. And we've had this chat so many times, like, how can you help, like, you know, say young women who are feminists, like, what does it take to, like, make them wake up? I think to an extent, you do need the strong guy, because I think women are attracted to that. And if you can admit that to yourself and say, this is the kind of guy I'd like to be with, who kind of like, you know, I find him attractive or whatever, like I could see, you know, this going somewhere. That was a great motivator for me to keep having those difficult chats. I was like, this is hard, and like my ego is hurting, and clearly I'm not as clever as I thought. But, you know, this guy is really, you know, he's being very patient with me. He's willing to like talk it through. So I think that made a big difference, just being able to talk about it maybe 10 times, 20 times.
So he was so interested, and did you at any point feel out of your depth or think, okay, we're just different, this is not happening? Or you both had that sort of interest with each other, you kept going?
I think, like, there was definitely something in each of us. It was timing. I think maybe, like, if we'd met each other at a different time, it wouldn't have, like, come together. But I think we were both just ready. Like, Peter had, you know, been through a separation. That was difficult for, like, all kinds of reasons when there's children involved. And he really didn't think that he would ever like marry someone or like be in a serious relationship. I kind of was on the opposite, where I was like, I'm done with just dating. I would really like to meet someone who I can be serious about. So I said that to him quite early on. I was like, look, I know that I want to get married and have kids. If you're not interested, let me know, you know, as soon as you know, because I don't want to like waste any time. And, you know, fortunately he was kind of open-minded about it. So he, I'm just watching him. He's so adorable.
He is so lovely.
So good.
How old were Peter's girls at that point?
They
when
were
you met?
6.
They were 6. So then, from that time, start dating, conversations, interest in each other. Then did you then at some point decide to move in together, get married? What was the next steps?
Yeah, so we've been dating for 2 years when Peter proposed. And then we were planning to do like a very kind of quick turnaround wedding, and then COVID happened. So we were going to get married like quite soon after getting engaged, and then COVID happened, so nobody could come. And ultimately we just decided to go and get married anyway during COVID, and we just took Peter's girls with us and my mum. So that was just the 5 of us. We went to Scotland. Yeah, so we got married in Scotland, which was great. Really, really nice. And then we moved in together. So like, although I wouldn't even have said at that point we were like that traditional, we still were on board with like, we shouldn't really live together before we're married, at least not full time. And we definitely wanted to be married before we like had any kids, if we were going to have any kids.
So the kids thing is not so uncommon. Lots of people think like when we get married we have children, but what about the living together? Where did that come from? That's difficult for the normal Catholics. So why you weren't Catholic at all at this point? And he is Catholic, but he's not.
But he's not been practicing for a long time by that point. I don't know, it might have, I never really thought about that before, but I think it might have just been
rare.
left over from, my dad was definitely like more traditional probably than my mum. Again, there was like quite an age gap between them, so my dad was that bit older. And he was very unhappy when my older half-sister lived with her would-be husband. So they like lived together for a long time before they were married, and I remember that being like a bit of tension. So it might have just been that like in my subconscious I was like, okay, well, dad wasn't really like that keen on it. And probably if my mom was honest, she probably wasn't that keen on it either, even though she, you know, it was, you know, definitely more of a feminist than my dad. So it might just have been that, just like, you know, we can like, maybe we won't do it fully properly because we, you know, we weren't religious at that point, so we didn't like play it by the rules. But yeah, I don't think either of us were like, well, we should just move in together.
And would there be like a magical kind of element to let's just get married and then move in together, as it's like, you know, the romantic fairy tale, that element to it?
I don't think so. I don't think it was like kind of delaying, because I was spending a lot of time there, especially because like he had the girls. So kind of in a way we were already having like a family life, you know, before we were married, because there were kids involved. So like it was a different dynamic than it would have been like when it was just the two of us. Like when it was just the two of us there, we did different things than when, you know, his girls were there. So I don't think it was kind of like the fairy tale thing.
And then I suppose you were living with your mum. Was your sister with your mum as well at that point? She'd gone.
University.
Yeah. So you're living with your mum, and then so you get married, and then you did move into Peter's.
Yeah.
And then about a month into that, you then came into this lovely home.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so it was maybe 4 months after we got married that we actually moved in.
This is only 4 years ago. You're now a fully fledged Catholic.
Fully fledged ex-feminist. Recovering feminist. Yeah.
Feminism Anonymous. So, how did you become a Catholic? So Peter's on this like natural sort of traditional, maybe trajectory at this point then, because he's asking questions.
Yeah, I think there was something in both of us definitely that was like drawn towards the tradition, and definitely we got married, and obviously like, you know, whether you are religious or not, like marriage isn't easy. So then we kind of like start to have some tensions, and we're like, well, how do we figure this out? Like, is there actually any guidance for what is a good wife or a good husband, and like what are our responsibilities to each other? What is the point of being married? And like those are big questions, and you don't really like get a satisfactory answer, I think, unless you kind of come to faith eventually. But we started looking into it from like just a common sense point of view, like, well, we can't both be great at caring for the kids. We can't both be the one in charge of fixing the cars. So like there is a natural division that's going on anyway. Shall we just embrace it? Like, and it seems to be kind of dividing along traditional, you know, gender roles.
And at this point, would you still consider yourself to be a feminist? No, you wouldn't. Okay.
No, definitely not.
And would you have said that out loud? Like, I'm not a feminist.
Oh
anymore?
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, much to my family's disappointment. Yeah. But yeah, no, definitely. But I think, interestingly, like when we started to examine those like traditional gender roles and what they might mean, we kind of uncovered that there was still a lot of like feminism within us, as in like, well, maybe we like the idea of traditional gender roles, but why shouldn't I work? Or like, what's the reason that someone should be at home with the kids? You know, does it have to be the mom? So I think then we went through like a second stage in a way of like identifying, well, there is that reluctance in us about like a parent being at home, like a mum being at home. And
I was going to say that even like with the language, like who has to be at home, but what about who gets to be at home?
Yeah.
You know, like that, but that is the language out there. Like someone's got to stay at home and look after the children, or, you know, someone has the opportunity to, and somebody has it in their heart and their natural instincts and, you know, being as a woman to nurture.
Yeah. And I think it also depends like on your upbringing, because like I always had a parent at home, but it was actually my dad. So my dad was at home with us most of the time because he was that bit older, he didn't work. So I came at it from the point of view of like, oh, beautiful flowers. Oh, I always had like my dad at home, but like Peter didn't have, you know, parents at home. So I think when you come at it from different perspectives, you don't necessarily see the value. And I think that's when we kind of started to have like interesting chats again, because it was like, well, if I'm going to be at home, what does it actually mean? And I hadn't thought about that either, because I didn't grow up with like a mum at home. I knew examples of like maybe women who had made the house a home, you know, really successfully, but I didn't have like a model for that kind of femininity. So I didn't really know what goes into it. But I think Peter had more of a sense of it. He was like, well, you know, if you're going to be at home, it's not just looking after the kids. It's not just going through the motions. They're very pretty.
Don't pick any more though, Mim, because
They're like little earrings.
There's like a whole.
Yeah, there are a lot, aren't there? Is it under the trees?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's fine. There's so many. So many.
gorgeous. Go and have a
Do you
look.
need a wipe?
You can wash hands in the bathroom room if you like.
But yeah, so long story short, we kind of started looking into traditional gender roles because that's kind of what was happening. Did a lot of like research, I suppose, into
I saw
what kind of. What did you see? Do you know his name? Should I tell you his name? It's Henry. Henry VIII.
Oh, he's
He has
got
many
6
wives.
wives.
Yeah, he has more than 6 wives. He's a very greedy cockerel, but he's so regal looking. Our cockerel.
Go out, yeah. Sit with
Or you can stay and be cozy.
my boots are so muddy.
Your boots are so muddy. Yeah, it's a bit sticky out there, isn't it?
So you're looking into traditional gender roles.
Yeah. And
Where would you get your literature or information on this?
So we watched like a lot of Jordan Peterson, and he does like some really great, obviously he does his whole biblical series, which we started to watch kind of at this time. And he also talks about like the importance of, you know, mothers and fathers and marriage and like, you know, what, a little bit of delving into like, what does it mean to be like a good husband and a good wife? So like I would give, you know, he a big credit for kind of like sorting out some of that common sense stuff, like what is like, you know, what actually makes sense, what's the best way to do it in, you know, a marriage or as parents. And then I don't really know how long it was after that, but Peter started kind of like exploring more like faith content, like largely stuff on YouTube, just like watching videos. And then he ordered himself a rosary.
yes. I was going to ask about
and I
that
was
'cause I
like-
heard it in your video.
I was like, fascinating. Why have you ordered yourself a rosary?
I hear him before I go to sleep and focus on the day that's been. I realize he's there when I turn the light off and turn over. Nobody knows about my man. They think he's lost on some horizon. And suddenly I find myself listening to a man I never known before, telling me about the sea, all his loves till eternity. Ooh, he's here again, the man with the child in his eyes. He's here again, the man with the child in his eyes. He's very understanding, he's so aware.
And would you know what a rosary was?
Yeah, but I probably wouldn't have known. I don't think I knew what you did with it. Like, I knew that it was a Catholic thing, but I probably just thought that it was something that, like, priests carried around, because that would have been the only time I'd seen it, not, like, anyone, just a normal person having a rosary.
And then Peter was Catholic, so maybe...
We never really talked about that. This is the thing, like, before he ordered the rosary, we didn't really have chats about his, like, Catholic upbringing. So, like, I guess I was aware of it, but not focused on it at all. So, yeah, he ordered this rosary, and I was like, do you want to tell me why you've ordered a rosary? And he was like, nope, I'm not ready to talk about it. And that I was like, wow, okay, because we can, like, by that point, we've talked about so many difficult things. I was like, if you can't talk to me about it, that means that, like, you haven't figured it out, which means that, like, you're seriously considering
Mem,
this.
your head is in
You
front
might
of the camera. Sorry, go ahead.
Such a nice head with the bows. Yeah, I just realized that, like, I suppose that humility in him, like, I haven't figured it out. That was, again, like, I was really intrigued. So I thought, well, if you have seen something in the rosary that's made you want to get one, I should get one. Because I thought, well, if you're going down that path, like, I don't want you to go alone. What if you want to talk about it? And I don't know what it is. So I got myself a rosary as well.
Where did you get the rosary from?
From a car boot sale.
Did you?
Yeah, for £1, yeah.
You found one there?
Yeah, in London there was this car boot sale and there was like a whole box of rosaries, so I probably spent 20 minutes like trying to pick the perfect rosary, not really knowing what it was.
Yeah.
I just happened to have one.
And what was Peter's one like?
I can get them.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, let me get them. Yeah, so Peter's is this one, which is like manly, and it's Saint Benedict.
Oh, nice. And
so
maybe
like-
he'd chosen this one
He
online
did,
or
yeah.
something.
Yeah, so he chose
That's a
that one
solid
online.
ratio. It's lovely.
So it's like nice and sturdy, and then I got my like nice cheapy one with
It's
the
very
little
cold.
beads.
It's like some sort of stone, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true actually, because mine is probably plastic.
But pretty.
But I like it. It's got
Yeah, I
the
like
Sacred
it.
Heart on it.
Yeah, and it's got a
like,
crucifix.
This is kind of vintagey.
Lovely.
So yeah, then we had this, and then we wrote out all the prayers.
Crucifix.
Yeah, no, I like it. I haven't lost it yet, so that's great.
So then you wrote out the prayers.
Yeah, so we wrote out all the prayers, and then we like took it in turns to getting to practice because it took us ages. So I remember, it seems like a lifetime ago, but we were like, okay, I'm gonna go and take my half an hour now and go into the bedroom with the door closed, and I'm gonna practice. You know, and it would take me like a full 40 minutes to do a rosary because I had no idea what I was doing.
Wow.
And
But
then it
it's
was
like
Peter's turn.
just a Catholic practice that we're going to do. And there might be some fruits, but we're going to do the thing.
I think it was just because it was one of those things that like before kind of going to mass, we could like access it, I suppose. Maybe that's what attracted Peter to it. And also he was like watching some like Taylor Marshall, and obviously Taylor Marshall is big on like do the rosary every day. So maybe, you know, I think Peter was like, okay, well, like, you know,
I'll just do it.
Yeah, I'll just
Do
do
the
it.
thing.
I'll give it a good go. Is that nice cake? It's all gone. It must be good. Yeah, so then I tried it as well. And then I think shortly after that, or kind of in conjunction with that, we started looking into the traditional Latin Mass, kind of found out that there was one fairly close to us. And then the
Fairly close being like an hour.
Oxford. Yeah, well, yeah, okay, like 40 minutes from here. But yeah, we went to Mass, and I waited
Then
outside.
was this your first Mass?
But I didn't go.
You didn't go
first
in?
time. No, I waited outside for Peter. Because he was like, I want to go to Mass.
You want to do his
and I
thing.
was like, oh, you know, I'm not really like that fussed at that stage, so I didn't go.
So what did you do instead? Just wait outside?
I just waited outside.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I don't even remember the first time that we went together. It was probably soon after that. It was one of the Christmas services, which was like amazing. You know, so like an immense experience. And we both came out of that. We were like, well, that's the best thing I've ever seen. Wow. You know, like the best church experience either of us had ever had. So we're kind of like hungry for more.
And could you put any words to that? Like, what was it that was so wonderful or inspiring?
My sister asked me this a while ago. She was like, how do you describe like when you go into church? Like, how do you feel? And I just said hungry to you. And that's kind of like how I felt, like you crave something, like it's something that you need. And that's how I felt. Like we went to this Christmas service, and then like we both kind of separately, because we were like working in Oxford, we both like found excuses to go to church. So like whether there was a mass or not, like we'd come home at the end of the day and I'd be like, oh, I dropped into like, you know, there today, and I like just lit some candles. And then like, you know, the next week Peter would be like, yeah, you know, I just went in like, you know, after work. You know, so at least how I felt, I was like, oh, I'm walking past. That's kind of exciting. I can go in. That could be my place. That's how it felt. It was like exciting to yeah, it was exciting.
Because otherwise the Latin Mass is seen as being maybe even like standoffish, and it's like the priest is facing away and he's speaking a different language, and it's a dead language. And
yeah, but I didn't really know anything about it. Like I'd never experienced a mass in English, I think. So I didn't have anything to compare it to. I wasn't like, oh, well, I'm used to this feeling more accessible. I think like just the church itself felt beautiful, and maybe that made it feel accessible. I don't know. And something peaceful, like candlelight, you know, quiet.
yeah, and I still think that's surprising for somebody who's not had any experience with anything, whether it's the new Mass or just having a conversation with somebody. You go in somewhere, there's this big room with high ceilings, and there's a priest facing the front, and he's not kind of like trying to talk to you about anything, and you're just somehow drawn in.
Yeah, it was, I mean, like the first time I ever went to adoration, I was like, whoa, okay, that's like the next level up, you know, because that was a different experience in itself. But I mean, Peter definitely like, you know, drew me to the Catholic faith. But before that, like I was always drawn to churches in my life. It was like wherever I was in a city, I'd be like, okay, well, like, is there a church? Like I need to go in the church.
And you also had said that when you were younger, you had some attraction to the Madonna and Child. Madonna and Our Lady and the Child as well.
That's Madonna, who's been with me since I was 12. She's just a magazine page that I framed.
Wow.
She's very lovely.
Beautifully. Is that Our Lady of Perpetual Succor? I don't know.
I don't know either.
Maybe Little Lord is hugging up to her a bit more than
someone who knows
one.
more about it than I would be able to tell you. I have no idea. Yeah. But yeah, no, like throughout my life, definitely, I always liked images of the Madonna. So like my sister would like buy them for me. Like she bought me that one at a garage sale in Canada. And then I took it with me everywhere. And then kind of throughout my life, like there would be other instances where she'd be like, oh, I found this picture. Like, you know, I'll give it to you like this one.
That's the
So,
one.
like, she got
I
me this
saw.
one.
Oh, that's tiny. Because I saw, when you were talking about on one of your videos, this is the one that maybe popped up soon after. And I was trying to think of the name of it.
Madonna of the Streets, isn't that what it's
I
called?
don't know.
One of my friends has it up in her house,
Gorgeous.
like in a big form.
Beautiful.
Yeah, trying to say before, like always got drawn into like that piece in the church. And when I was in Paris, like I went into the Notre Dame. Hello, are you talking through the?
The door.
Are you gonna give me some post? Yeah, I went to Notre Dame before it got burned down, and I went every day. And then I went to like a Gregorian chant concert, and it was like genuinely just such a spiritual experience. Like I felt like I suppose maybe I believed in God, but I felt close to God. I was like, well, if he's there, like he's here. If he's somewhere, he's right now in that space.
And was that at Notre Dame, did you say, that Gregorian choir concert?
Yeah. Yeah, so it was just like Gregorian chant. It was by candlelight, I think at like 8 p.m. And I'd been going every day.
Wow.
And then it was like, oh, tomorrow night there's going to be Gregorian chant. And I remembered that like my dad had liked Gregorian chant. So I was like, oh, I'll go. Like maybe I'll, you know, kind of think of him while I'm there. You know, which I did. And yeah, it was just, that was beautiful.
So there's things that our conscious can't even necessarily always put words to, but these may be like the language of our soul or something, like the beauty and these senses that we experience, and we don't know why they raise our spirits so much, but maybe it's like, just goes directly through to your soul.
Yeah, I think it just like, you, like whether you're kind of looking for God or not, like he kind of finds you, like when you need him. I feel like when I look back at my life, there were so many little moments where like there were those touch points of connection, like don't, you know, I haven't forgotten you, like I'm still here, you know, and like definitely with the Madonna. Yeah, just like all of these like little gifts and signals.
Like
just
pursuing you.
Yeah, pretty much. Like just patiently being like, come on, you know, I'm still here, waiting.
Sending a little gift.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just like little moments of peace. And I went when I did my master's. Then afterwards, I went to Auschwitz because I studied the Holocaust for my master's. And so I went to Auschwitz with like a girlfriend who I'd studied with. And we're like, you know, afterwards, obviously very moving but depressing place to go, like important place but depressing. And we're like walking around Old Town, you know, Krakow afterwards. And there's a candlelit service in a church. And we go in and we sit and we like cry. And then afterwards, like someone comes up and chats to us and like asks where we're from. We're like, oh, you know, we've been to Auschwitz today. And she just said, so you needed God. And I was like, yeah, I did. You know, and you don't even realize that at the time. But I was like, yeah, 100% I needed, you know, a little reminder of like the beauty and the humanity and like, you know, sitting there listening to people sing.
Because it's like you've been to like, it's like the depths of hell, what happened there. It's just horrendous.
Yeah, like the worst of humanity, and then kind of to be brought back to this beauty of song and like joy and people together and simple worship, I suppose.
Yeah, I would like to go there one day. And I read Patricia Treece's collection of witness statements about Maximilian Kolbe. Okay. It's a really good book. And it's a really powerful testimony to him, and that how powerful that he was there whilst it was all going on, and in the room that was like the worst of the worst, where there was like the starvation chamber, and it could be so long, and it was so long for him, and then he brought love, he brought our Lord in there.
Yeah.
How powerful, and what a reminder for, you know, tough times in life, and how we can carry the love of our Lord with us. So then, when did you, now, fast forward, bite the bullet and think, do you know what?
Into the
I
church.
want to be a Catholic.
Yeah. So.
And would that be 2 years ago, May?
2 years ago in May.
Yeah, so 2023.
On the Feast of the Visitation. Which is very nice.
And did you pick that date?
No, didn't know it was that day. No, I like went into church for my confirmation, and then the priest was like, "Oh, you know, it's the feast," and I was like, "I know so little." I'm like entering the church, and I don't even know what day it is.
Well, I feel like I know so little. Like you just open up a little window and you think, there's so much I don't know. Because I've now just realised there's a whole other area of things I don't know. There's so much.
Yeah, no, pretty much. So I bit the bullet because obviously Peter was raised Catholic, but in order for him to receive the Eucharist, we needed to redo our wedding within the Catholic Church. And then kind of, gently the priest asked me like, and would you consider like, entering the Catholic Church? And I was like, yeah, I would. So I just went through kind of like I suppose a fast-paced, maybe it was like 3 or 4 months of one-to-one meetings with one of our parish priests. And, he gave me loads of great reading material, and we had, these really kind of quality time, one-on-one chats, to kind of answer my bigger questions. But I don't think there was really that much hesitation. I wasn't like put off by faith, and it just like felt right. Like I couldn't deny like the feeling I felt in church. So there was no reason to be like reluctant. I had no kind of bad opinion of like Catholicism or Catholics. I hadn't had any kind of like baggage around that. So there was, and I like trusted Peter. I was like, well, if he thinks it's a good idea, then it's probably a good idea. So,
but then big things like you might have naturally had, overcome any adversity to Our Lady, which lots of people can sometimes find a difficult thing, but maybe that comes from like the Anglican or Protestant angle. But what about things like the true presence of the Eucharist? Is that okay? That was just something you just took apart?
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of like, it's one of those things when you haven't got faith, it's a leap of faith, I think, to believe in it. That's kind of still, I'm just trying to be patient with myself that there's things that like I can't understand, or maybe I'm not meant to understand. But if I, believe, then I have to kind of take it as a package. But there's still moments where I'm like, okay, well, this sounds kind of corny to say it, or it feels kind of corny to admit it, because when you live a secular lifestyle and like you're kind of against God, and it's like, well, I'm going to give credit to me, and like to even say like, well, praise God, or like, thank God for His grace, or like, it's because of God I can do this. All of that is still like a work in progress for me. So
then like tenets of the faith. Okay, what about social teachings of the church?
I think the only thing that, was a question in my mind was really just like the openness to life, which we kind of discussed early on when we were entering the church. So that was really my big question, because that was probably the stereotype that I knew of Catholicism, is like, okay, well, no birth control. So when we were entering the church, I just said to Peter, I was like, can I just check, like, when you say you want to be like Catholic, like, does that mean all of it? Is that all of the teachings? Are we going to like pick and choose anything? And he was like, what are you trying to get at? And I was like, well, just, are we like open to having more kids? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, great, okay, good. Big question answered. So probably I was like a little bit hesitant about that, because again, I'd been raised where I was like, well, 2 kids is like enough, enough already, or like have a nice big gap between them, like, have some me time and make sure that you still have your date nights and, all of that stuff. But then in a way it was also a relief, because it's like, okay, well, it's not in my hands. I don't need to worry about, I'm not in control of it. It's like, it's all up to God, like whatever He decides is good for us. So, and that's very refreshing, I think, like to kind of let go of that previous mindset and just be, children are a blessing, family is a blessing. That is 100% like where I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to be doing.
And I think underneath it all as well, it's a gorgeous compliment for your husband, wanting your children and wanting to, your beautiful mummy and wanting to be mother of his children, and I think that's a gorgeous, romantic gesture.
Romantic.
Yeah,
it's a romantic gesture.
I think it's like even secular people say, "I want to have your babies." They say,
but it's like, it's corny, but it's so true. Like that's your natural instinct. You love someone, and you're like,
so
literally, I need to complete this love with you. We need to make another person that's a little bit like you, because it's just not enough just loving you. Yeah, I need more.
I'm so open to having whatever will come from this. Yeah, and please God.
That's why I would like a son so much. I just like need another little man in the house.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for chatting with me and for having us today. It's lovely hearing the girls all clucking about.
Having a wild time.
So lovely. Thank you, Elizabeth. It's been a delight to meet you. Please check out Elizabeth's channel. Thank you for watching. Have a look at our other episodes if you'd like to have a little look. We, if it's your first time looking, we create these Catholic documentaries. We create recreate documentaries about Catholic families, and there are lots of them out there. And, you know, for Elizabeth and other people who are looking to see what does that look like, have a look. There's all sorts of families out there, and we have been grateful to meet some of them. So God bless, thank you, keep us in your prayers, and consider supporting our work. God bless.
And now to cake and walks and dinner.
Done, Peter.
Met on a dating app. Yeah, did it all the modern way, I suppose, didn't he? And now got himself a tried wife, wants to have children. It's an unlikely solution, let's say, to the problem that a lot of Catholics find themselves in, of not being able to find a Catholic spouse.
Yes, get on that online dating.
Yeah, just give it a shot.
Yeah.
You know,
We've met several fantastic couples who've met online.
Yeah, and converted even after the facts. What's that film
Classic.
about? The Lord's mysterious ways. You often quote it.
Railway Children.
I love that film, Maria. What does he say?
I do love that film. I love the book as well. It's a fantastic read. The Lord works in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform.
Anyway, look, lovely film for children.
Yeah, that's a beautiful film and a really beautiful book to read.
Is it on
or listen to on Audible.
Is it on the RCA reading list?
It is.